Welcome to episode 116 of the High Volume Hiring Podcast. I am Stephen Rothberg. I'm the founder of College Recruiter Job Search Site. I'm joined here today by one of my partners in crime, Jeanette Leeds. Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't get into your like sordid criminal past, at least, in video and like list all the terrible things you've done in
I
your life.
will not say another word about any of that. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Uh, I'm Jeanette Leeds, and we'll just leave it at that. I'm really excited today because we have with us Keith Spencer, who is a career expert at Resume Now. So, welcome, Keith.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I know our topic today, headline is turnover is higher in far higher in some industries. What can we do about it? But maybe before we get into that, tell our listeners, like, what is a career expert?
Yeah.
What
So,
does that mean?
a career expert, at least a career expert at Resume Now, is someone who focuses on, providing career advice and job market insights to, support job seekers. We want to make sure that job seekers are, well informed going into their job search. And to become a career expert, it helps to have a decade plus of working in the career development arena.
That's
Awesome.
perfect.
And college recruiters had some partnerships with Bold over the years. Last summer, they acquired Career Builder and Monster. Maybe a year or two before that, Flex Jobs.
Yeah.
So it's a career company, helps candidates, find good jobs, apply, get hired, et cetera, et cetera. Tell me a little bit more about like the Resume Now part of it specifically. Like, how does that fit into the rest?
Yeah, so Resume Now is an AI resume builder that aims to provide a personalized, quick, and easy resume building experience for job seekers. The job search process can be really complex. There's a lot of steps. So we try to simplify at least the resume writing aspect of it, as well as CV writing, cover letter writing. We have lots of resources and templates to support the needs of job seekers because resume writing is not a intrinsic skill that most people are born with. So that's where we're here to help.
Career experts, maybe, but not
Yeah.
most people.
Oh, my
Exactly.
first resume out of college was terrible. I had to learn too.
Yes, it is a skill. I love that. So I'm thinking like, the market, things are, changing. I mean, things are always changing, but we know turnover. So we're topic today, turnover, it's higher in certain industries. What industry, and I feel like this again changes. Typically we always feel like it's certain ones versus the others. What are you seeing? Which are the like really high turnover ones right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting to discover that, job hopping is not universal. A lot of people think it is, but it is highly
Right.
industry dependent. So, we've seen those highest rates of turnover in things like food service and preparation, personal care, personal service, sales, even, like farming, fishing, forestry, and management roles as well, kind of those sort of mid-level manager roles.
Interesting.
So some companies that hire at scale, that doing high volume hiring, it's because they're growing really fast. Some have high turnover,
Mhm.
and so they're just like on this treadmill, and they just have to be replacing a lot of people.
Yeah.
What's the difference that you're seeing at Resume Now between an organization that is doing a ton of hiring because they're bad at keeping people versus an organization that's just, our business is booming. We need to hire a lot more people.
Right. So when you have the turnover or you're dealing with that attrition and that's motivating your hiring, usually it comes down to a handful of reasons. Some of the roles that I mentioned have relatively low wages,
Mhm.
insufficient benefits, limited advancement. They could be sort of stressful conditions or environments which can create higher rates of burnout. Sometimes it's contract or seasonal work, which sort of has the turnover built into it. But also, contract and seasonal work has that financial instability that a lot of people can't effectively manage. Similarly, with commission or tip based work, so that can really drive those higher rates of turnover. It's sort of the inherent push factors.
Yeah.
Are pushing people away or pushing them to look for other opportunities.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely what I've seen in my experience. One of the other things that I see a lot, and I'm curious if you have seen this as well, and then like how maybe you have any ideas on mitigating it, is particularly with shift workers where they're not getting their schedule
Right.
till the week of, right? And then it changes week by week, and it makes it really difficult, to live life, right?
Right.
Childcare. How do you deal with that, or just any other responsibilities? Are you seeing that as like one of the main like one of those big factors? And either way, like what can organizations do?
Yeah, absolutely. People, I think most people value stability. So when you have that unpredictability
Yeah.
built into your scheduling of your employees, that absolutely makes it more difficult to structure other aspects of your work because it's important to remember we have lives outside of work, and knowing when you
Some
will.
of us do,
Some of us do.
and
But, having a predictable schedule is really important for a lot of folks. So
Right.
if you are, operating a shift-based organization, just providing a bit more consistency with the shifts that people are working rather than changing up the schedule all the time. And it makes it easier for your schedulers as well.
I was just gonna say, just related to that, and this is one thing I haven't really ever gotten such a like a really good answer, is why organizations even change it up all the time. Because it seems to me super logical where it's like, okay, a little bit of change here and there, but like in general, why are you making all these crazy changes week in, week out? Like, so any insight there of like,
Yeah,
for why?
that's a tough one to answer because I
I
think there
know.
are so many variables. Sometimes it could even just be, that two individuals don't work well with each other, so you have to keep them
True.
on separate shifts. Or
True.
sometimes it's just need based. If people are calling out and things like that. So uh, I understand why it happens, but I think it's also really important to strive as best you can to provide that consistency and predictability.
What if being a leader worth following means being human, imperfect, and open to learning? This is Kate Johnson, owner of 123 Limited, and I want to invite you to discover how to care for, support, and even love the people you lead. Join me every Tuesday for the Well Led podcast.
yeah, one of my kids, before he went into a physician assistant program, had to accumulate a certain number of hours, I think 2,000
Mm,
hours or something like that, basically a year's worth of work in a healthcare related profession. And he did personal care attendant,
mm,
where he was working in a group home. And they would sign up, like, I think 2 weeks in advance and just sort of grab the shifts they wanted.
yeah.
And that sort of helped and it sort of didn't, because if he really wanted a day off, he could do that.
Mhm.
But he was working sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes double shifts, sometimes during the day, and it's hard for people. So I think that there are pros and cons to that too. So, a question that I had, Keith, that I've heard from a lot of HR people that over the years is I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Putting words, from talking like from the recruiter or the talent acquisition person. These are the rules my company has. All I can do is what my boss allows me to do. I don't like it. Her rules don't make sense. She doesn't care. Whatever the reasons are. It seems to me like that recruiter, that TA person should be able to have a conversation and convince the higher ups that maybe just because they've been doing it this way forever, they don't need to do it this way forever. If you were that TA person, how would you have that conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you, Stephen. I think that when you're in that type of role, it's important to whatever degree that you can be an advocate for employees or people you're trying to attract to your organization. If you're going to try to have that conversation, I recommend coming armed with data. If you can show, hey, we've been doing it this way and our turnover rate is this, and I've seen other organizations that are doing it a different way and they have a lower turnover rate, we could be saving some money on having to constantly rehire and retrain people. I think that would move minds a little bit quicker.
Absolutely. I mean, data is, although you can cut numbers differently, but is
Sure.
fact, right? And when you can have those benchmarks, that's huge. Any other suggestions around, change management, and making some changes to reduce turnover? Any other?
Yeah. So There are a lot of strategies you can employ.
Yeah.
Some will seem very, very obvious. Others, not so obvious. And I understand too, or I want to acknowledge that not all the strategies are feasible for every
Yeah.
organization. But the biggest one, of course, is offering improved financial incentives. So competitive pay, comprehensive benefit, cost of living is continuing to rise. It's apparently never going to stop. So, helping people financially is really, really important. But people also value, clear paths for advancement within their organization, including, transparent criteria for advancing. And they also appreciate greater internal mobility, both laterally and vertically. So that can be really important as well to a lot of, working professionals. Helping people stack skills, so to speak. So investing in their skill development, professional development, providing training, tuition reimbursement, things like that. It shows that you are invested in the person, not just the employee. We talked about providing that predictability. People also appreciate flexibility, autonomy. But then one of the things I think gets ignored the most is, turnover is heavily influenced by culture. So if you invest in training your managers and your supervisors, there's that adage, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses.
Right.
If you're training them in things like empathy, conflict resolution, clear communication, that can help foster a much healthier work environment and keep people happier for longer.
Let's talk about this issue before people even join your organization. Are there ways to identify, again, I'm a recruiter, I'm in TA, I want to reduce that turnover. What can I do before the person's start date to help reduce the likelihood that they'll turn over quickly?
Yeah. So two main things come to mind. The first is I think organizations could benefit from placing more focus on creating a good onboarding and training experience. That first 6 weeks, that is really what is setting the tone for the rest of that employee's time with that organization. So making sure that it is a positive experience is really important. But also too, something that I've been an advocate for a long time is stay interviews. We all know what exit interviews
Yep.
are, but I think organizations could benefit from stay interviews. To a really high degree, and you could pretty easily incorporate those into your annual performance reviews. You're doing these things really well. We'd love for you to improve in these areas. What can we do to keep you here? What do you need from us?
I love that.
So you write some articles for College Recruiter that we get, through your parent company Bold. We get one or two from you most months. Next month, please write an article about stay interviews.
About stay interviews, I will make a note about that right
Love
now,
it right
Stephen.
now, live.
Yes.
All right, I think we have time for probably one more question, so I'm gonna grab it. Do you have any tips or advice if we drill into maybe one or two specific industry or job types? So versus general advice, like because things can get really specific and niche. So any tips that's a little more specific?
Sure. So not to sound repetitive, but I think, when we're thinking about shift work, like you brought up
Yeah,
earlier, Jeanette, that tends to be more with, the food service preparation, personal care, things like that, retail.
yeah.
Trying your best in those areas that have the highest amount of turnover, just trying your best to think outside the box, if you will, ways that you can provide a bit more of that stability, predictability, that structure that people crave. Because I think, if you can make some small changes here and there, it can have a significant impact.
Absolutely, I agree. Like little baby steps can make a huge difference over time.
It shows people you care.
Yeah.
Perfection is the enemy of progress. One of my
Ooh.
favorite expressions. Yeah. Another one is you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, which people attribute to Wayne Gretzky. It actually wasn't Wayne Gretzky. It was Wayne Gretzky quoting his dad.
Oh, well, there you
So thank you,
go.
Walter.
Fun fact of the day.
Yeah,
Keith, this has been awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
I really appreciate the opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversation. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Cheers.